In recent weeks, 2 drill rappers have been murdered in Brooklyn.
I had no idea what drill rapping was, but I called my son, and he sent me some videos, and it is alarming.
It's
had the biggest target on its back. It's immensely popular, hard-hitting, and the lyrics are provocative.
Brooklyn has seen a surge in violence. DA Eric Gonzalez has seen a rise in social media drill rap videos using real guns that are used in real crimes.
Using drill on who killed each other, or stamping on someone's grave, or antagonizing to create what is considered the retaliatory shootings. Many of the shootings in our city are due to retaliatory actions. We don't need that.
The conversation gets deep because, you know, a lot of these kids, they in gangs before they even made a rap record. So is it the music? I don't think it's the music that's getting the average person to do crime.
Violent people who are using drill rapping to post who they killed and then antagonize the people who they are going to kill is what the problem is.
Drill music, there's a lot of talk about the violence that's associated
Yet
with it.
we are allowing music, displaying of guns, violence. We're allowing it to stay on these sites. Because look at the victims.
So the man could get a real perspective and a real understanding of what drill rap is.
We are alarmed by the use of social media to really over-proliferate this violence.
30 years ago, they wanted to ban Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre.
Yo, what's up, people? We is back. Never down, keep it G News. And today we talking about New York City, yo. Y'all see what we got going on. In New York City, it's been a debate on drill music. And the feds is coming down on them hard, actually. So in this video, we're going to talk about a multitude of different things. We're going to touch on the indictment of Sleepy Hollow. Wild things that the feds is alleging. And I'm going to take y'all to that press conference that the feds did when they discussed these charges and the things that they're alleging that they did. Very sloppy. One thing I'm noticing about this generation of criminals, man, is the way that they moving is sloppy. I don't know if it's that or technology is so enhanced, it's almost impossible to get away with crime. So we're going to touch on that, and we also going to touch on the rest of the indictments, because there's been a lot of them. It's actually 27 rappers in New York City that's currently facing indictment or arrested on some type of charges. And some of these guys are notable. You're talking about Casanova, the Sheff G's, the K Flocks. Like, these guys that actually had potential. Even Dougie B or whatever his name is. But these guys actually had potential to move outside of New York. Like, these not really local rappers, even though they were still in New York City. But they had the following, they had the influence, and they had the money to escape this lifestyle. But more times than often, these guys still get trapped. So like I said, in this video, we're going to talk about a lot. But first, we're going to talk about Sheff G.
This is really, quite honestly, a continuation of the type of gang violence we're seeing in our county, where 2 gangs join together to become more prominent, to have more geographical dominance, and really, quite frankly, to have more access to these deadly firearms. The main gang involved in this case today are the A-Tray Crips. They're there, and there you'll see them on the board. In the top center, sort of in the black shadow, you'll see Michael Williams. Now, many of you are familiar with Michael Williams because he's a fairly successful musician. He rap music. He's in the center. To his left, you'll see another person named Tegan Chambers. Tegan is known as Sleepy Hollow. He's also a rapper of prominence. Sheff G became, Michael Williams is also known as Sheff G. He became a prominent member of this gang and became central to our investigation, quite frankly, as his music career continued to shine. He established a record label, ultimately joining with Tegan Chambers. That record label had a deal with RCA Records, which is owned by Sony Music, And quite honestly, if you ask your children, if they're listening to these guys, you'll hear Sheff G and Tegan Chambers, Sleepy Hollow on their playlist. So these are fairly prominent musicians. What we allege and what we learned during the course of this investigation is that Sheff G used a lot of the money that he earned to help facilitate further gang activity. He encouraged gang members to participate in violent crimes. There's a shooting that took place in October of 2020, and that shooting is classified as a mass shooting. The lead up to that mass shooting started about a week earlier, where Sheff G was engaged in taunts with this folk nation rapper. And during that incident, it was decided that the folk nation headquarters, where they hung out on Hawthorne Street, would be targeted. As a result of that targeting, 6 people were shot, 1 of them fatally shot. In the video you're about to see, you're going to see a stolen white Infiniti drive up the block, back into a parking driveway, and then you will see a person pop out of the sunroof, the open sunroof, start shooting. There'll be also people shooting from the driver's side windows. In total, we estimate over 30 shots were fired. You'll see there are a number of people across the street that they're shooting at, including men and women. And then you'll see something that will show you how dangerous and coordinated these attacks are. You'll see a second vehicle that's also stolen. It was an SUV that was used as a blocker vehicle to block the police or block anyone from following the shooting car. And you'll see that the blocker vehicle, as the shooting begins, blocks the intersection and allows the shooting car to escape, driving the wrong way up a one-way street onto traffic where it's been sort of cordoned off for them to escape. One of the people identified and charged with the murder in this case is that man, Comandre Dekatu. He is a member of the A-Tray gang, and if you see prominently on his neck, he has the symbol of his gang, an 8 and a 3. Let's play this video. Okay, that is the vehicle. You'll see the vehicle now reverse into this driveway. And we're going to see this from 2 different angles. And now out the sunroof and out the windows, 3 gunmen are firing. This car goes up the one-way street in the wrong direction. Here's another angle. By the way, this car was stolen and the license plates were changed. There's the blocker car, the SUV. It's now going to cut off the intersection to allow the car that's going to commit the shooting to escape, coming up the one-way street. Then it immediately follows. Across the street, you see a lot of people hanging out. The shooting vehicle is going to be all the way to the far left of the video. You won't be able to see that clearly, but you'll see the people running. And if you see closely, you'll see the vehicle turning in the opposite direction and fleeing. If you're watching, you'll be able to see a man who gets shot right there fall to the ground. Fortunately, that person survived the shooting. Pure mayhem, women and men. There was a female victim of that shooting as well. again, pure mayhem. A 23-year-old man named Theodore Sr. was fatally killed during the shooting. I've already said 5 other people were wounded, some with serious injuries to their bodies. Defendant Dekatu is charged with murder, as well as his co-conspirators, including in the conspiracy is Sheff G and his sister, Crystal Williams. They're charged with conspiracy to commit murder for these shootings, as well as for their roles in encouraging other shootings. Specifically, before this homicide took place, their messaging that we allege Crystal Williams sent to her brother, Sheff G, who told her brother that that one of the main Folk Nation members had to get hit or killed, and only after 1 hour after this shooting, Michael Williams, aka Sheff G, is communicating with a trusted gang member, and he's asking if the A-Trays had scored, and he's asking for proof of that score to be sent to him by screenshots. Just a few days later, Sheff G takes the shooters from this incident and some other gang members for a very lavish, expensive steak dinner where they celebrate the score against their rivals. There's video of that, and we're not showing that today, but that dinner was paid for in cash by Sheff G, celebrating the score that they had shot 6 people 2 days earlier. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about Michael Williams, a.k.a. Sheff G. He's a Brooklyn kid. He grew up in Flatbush. We believe he became gang involved at a very young age. He got some notoriety as a drill rapper early in his life. But by 2017, he really started to have, commercial success. He was really playing music that had been reached the masses. And as I've already said, he formed a record label with his friend. RCA Records bought that label, and obviously RCA Records is owned by Sony Music. He teamed up with Tegan Chambers, who's known as Sleepy Hollow. That Sheff G is not a wannabe drill rapper. He is a legitimate person who made it good. He has gold records. He's made a lot of money. He rented a very large house. Some dare call it a mansion in Short Hills, New Jersey, where he was staying. He has millions of monthly listeners and over 100 million views on social media, including on YouTube and Spotify. But instead of using his fame and his fortune for the betterment of himself and his family and those close to him, we allege that he used that fame and fortune to elevate gang violence in Brooklyn. We learned that Sheff G encouraged shootings, often by offering money or jewelry, by hosting extravagant affairs like the dinner we mentioned, and using rap songs to help hype up fellow gang members. We also have direct information that Sheff G had access to a large number of firearms and weapons, which we believe may have been used to further supply the gang with these deadly firearms. Most importantly, we also allege that he had direct and active involvement in some of these shootings, as you're going to see it involved in the shooting that took place on April 6, 2021. What's important to know about this shooting is that a day before or 2 days before, Sheff G's home in Short Hills was attacked and it was shot up, and he believed, and the gang believed, that rivals were responsible for shooting his home up in New Jersey. Recovered text messages between Sheff G and a guy named Olivel Martinez, who's a fellow gang member, but also the boyfriend of his sister, Crystal Williams, surmised that one of their fellow gang members had to betray them to give up Sheff G's secret house in Short Hills. And so there's a lot of conversation around getting revenge on the gang member who had betrayed them. And the gang, the A-Trays, in 9 ways, spent months trying to track this individual down for retribution for giving up his home. I'll talk about this, what they believe this turncoat who gave up Sheff G's address. Ultimately, 10 members of the gang captured him one day, kidnapped him, drove him off to a cemetery in Brooklyn, and started to beat him to death. He was saved because some random person called 911 and the police responded. And video of the beating was captured. We're not going to show it because it's so graphic, but to say that he came within inches of his life is not an understatement. Those individuals were charged with kidnapping and assault. But the revenge went beyond this turncoat. They wanted to get revenge at the group they believe shot at Sheff G's house. That was this group called the Babies. You'll see a text message between Sheff G and his Oliver Martinez, which is the guy, again, who dates his sister, where they discuss targeting a rival ICG Babies gang member. Just the import of this is the exchange ends with Sheff saying, SNM, say no more, this gets done, I got $5K for you. Later the same day, the shooting takes place. Now, it's going to be hard to see the shooting, but I'll orient you. It's a white SUV. It's stolen. It's a man crossing the street. He's a rival gang member from the group that is involved, what they believe is involved in the shooting of Sheff G's house. That vehicle is stalking him, and as he starts to cross the street, that vehicle will make a left-hand turn. As they make the left-hand turn, you will not be able to see the shooting because the shooters are in the car, but he's shot 7 times point blank in his chest. Let's play the video. Right there, he's being hit by the gunshots. You can see him, he tries to run away, and ultimately, as he gets to that corner, he collapses. He was shot 7 times in the chest. He had multiple surgeries and was in the hospital for a really long time, for weeks upon weeks. He did survive this shooting, fortunately for him, and really fortunately for all of us. Sheff G is currently in jail on a unrelated gun charge. He was arrested by the police department, and inside one of his vehicles that he was driving at that time, inside a trap in the car, he had a .45 caliber handgun. He's pled guilty to that case, and he will now be arraigned on this new indictment. But his involvement with the gang didn't end while he was incarcerated. Tegan Chambers, among others, Tegan Chambers of Sleepy Hollow, continued to communicate with him and give him, information about the activity of the gang. In fact, the investigation showed that after Sheff G was arrested with the gun, he was very worried about what would be recovered from his cell phone, and he asked Tegan Chambers to wipe his phone to get rid of all of the data, including location data and financial data off his phone, which Tegan Chambers had agreed to do. I want to be clear, because we spent a lot of time talking about Sheff G. This is not an indictment about rap music. In fact, this investigation did not rely on a single lyric to prove any of the alleged crimes. But it is an indictment of how, when someone does well for themselves and could do real good in our community, they use their fame and they use their money to further gang violence. We believe that much of the violence perpetrated by this gang was made possible because Michael Williams had a lot of cash. And he promised members that if they put in the gang work, they would be rewarded, either financially or appear in some of his videos, or even get a record contract for themselves like Sleepy Hollow did. The very last slide that I'm going to show you, because for those who think these cases do not make a difference, this is a text message between Sheff G, Oliver Martinez, and other gang members revolving around a press conference that we had right in this very room just roughly 2 years ago, and there's a link to a YouTube. In that, they're talking about how one of their fellow gangs had been arrested and taken down, and they're talking about the dangers of using social media and apps to communicate and convey and to do gang business. And in this particular case, they're talking about they got the information off the Telegram application, meaning the police and the DA's office. I think that's a photo of me there. So these things do matter. These gang members do pay attention to these cases, and they're simply mistaken. So I'll make this clear. It doesn't matter which social media company you use or what apps you use. If you're engaging in street violence, if you're taking guns and you're shooting rivals, if you're hurting innocent bystanders, the NYPD will eventually track your case and bring you to the court of law. These individuals are being arraigned as we speak, and they will be held accountable, and they should expect long prison sentence. We surely will ask our judges to hold them accountable for what they did. Sheff G is looking at a minimum of 5 to 25 years for his involvement, as are many of the 32 members that were arrested today, and obviously anyone who was involved in the homicide is looking at a life sentence. So I want to be clear. Wiping your phone is not going to dissuade a prosecution. These cases take time, but we will ultimately solve these cases.
Understanding that if we focus on the small number of extremely violent people who have made up their mind that they will continue to do violence no matter what happens. Doesn't matter if they reach fame and fortune, they're going to use that fame and fortune to enhance their ability to have access to dangerous guns. 21 guns. There's not 421 guns to salute. There are 21 guns to shoot our neighborhoods and our families, and a total disregard for everyday New Yorkers who are walking our streets. And the intersectionality of what we have been talking about for some time is revealed in this case. This is a textbook case of all of the mechanisms that are being used. I'm strongly a believer that TikTok is a ticking bomb when it continues to use and exploit inner city conflicts to promote violence. When you have millions of views, young people are listening and watching the views, and there's a duplication of the behavior that is spreading like a cancer throughout our communities. It is not specifically drill music itself. It is those individuals who are using any platform to promote retaliatory violence. And that is what we are seeing over and over again. And all of us should be alarmed. We have communicated several times to our various social media platforms and stated that there is a moment of responsibility that comes with the impact that social media has on all Americans in general, but specifically on young people. If it's the Kia car challenge, if it's young people doing challenges and burning themselves, 85% of their bodies, or if it's what we saw today, using the platforms to assist in criminal behavior and reaching hundreds of millions of people that are already dealing with some very dark moments when you look at it. When you match the ready accessibilities of guns and those who are willing to use them anytime and anywhere in a very coordinated effort, you saw the sophistication of blocking off streets, targeting people, plotting out for months, the vicious beating in the cemetery. They're dangerous people. They're dangerous people. And it's a small number of them. They're repeated recidivists that as soon as you let them out, they're back on our streets.
In this particular case, gang members, whether they were the 8 Tray, the 9 Tray, or G-Stone Crips, terrorized these neighborhoods for the better part of 3 years. This investigation began shortly after the gang-related shooting of 6 people in October 2020 at 265 Hawthorne Street, one of which resulted in a homicide. No longer will these 32 individuals shoot their guns in the streets of New York City.
So this takedown, and we have some more in the hopper, shows our team will remain absolutely relentless in combating this irrational gun violence. Let's get right into the case. So A-Tray is an investigation into several violent gangs that fall under the Blood and Crip umbrellas. Namely, as mentioned earlier, A-Tray Crips, G-Stone Crips, and 9-Tray Bloods. Now, these gangs are aligned and all represent the WU. Now, that WU may sound familiar to many people, and for good reason. It's just tremendously, tremendously popular and really recognized worldwide, that WU name. So the case was initiated to combat violence in and around East Flatbush and Flatbush, and certainly extends into Canarsie, Crown Heights, Brownsville, so really covers a significant portion of Brooklyn.
Now, as y'all watched in the beginning, you see there's a real debate going on in New York City about this drill music. It even got confused to the point a lot of people thought that the mayor was actually trying to ban drill music. But that's not actually what he's trying to do. And those are the clips y'all watched in the beginning. He's really trying to hold the social media companies liable to some degree for showing these things, you know, promoting gun violence. And, you know, and I get that. I actually understand that a lot. I think that's actually a good idea, and I think these social media companies need to be held to some type of liability for promoting this stuff to our community. Because for the most part, I don't believe that if it was done to another community that they, you know, relate to a little bit more, I don't think it'd be accepted, especially considering what it's actually doing to these environments. Look what happened with Sheff G, man. A person that had all the promise, millions and millions of followers, views, doing his thing. But I understand why he went out the way he went out, even though it was senseless and stupid. You know, a lot of these kids, when you give sometimes when you give them money, that don't change their mentality, even though it should. Even though it should, a lot of times it don't. And instead of him putting his money into making more money the right way, the honest way, per America, he decided to put it into the streets and put it on top people's head. And, you know, this is what the feds is alleging. And actually, a lot of crimes been done on behalf of his orders. And like I said, it was sloppy. Sloppy work. And y'all heard from the federal government their self. Erasing messages and using them apps like WhatsApp and things like that is not going to protect you from the law. You know, they got ways to tap into those type of apps. Like those apps is not it. You're not getting away with no crimes. You're not being slick. You're not being sneaky just by erasing the message, because they got ways to recover it. And y'all just heard them from their mouth. You know, because a lot of people think that's the way to go. Shit, I can use this app. I can erase this. Nah. If that's the life you live in, keep it off the internet. Straight up, because these boys not playing. And Sheff G isn't the only one. Like I say, 27 rappers in New York, drill rappers, all drill rappers. Let me make that clear. Is currently arrested on multiple charges, including RICOs and firearms and attempt murders and murders. All violence, all gang related. Y'all think I'm playing? You know, because we seen a few. But how many people really understood that it was this bad?
Bobby, what do you have to say to your fans? Bobby, anything?
As you already know, I'm fighting serious charges right now. But I'm innocent. That's one. Two, I've been fighting my whole life, so I'll get through this.
Slime. Yeah. Y'all niggas know about top shotters.
The NYPD made several arrests, and top drill rapper Dougie B was among them. Rapper Casanova pleads guilty to federal racketeering and drug charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office claims Casanova led the untouchable guerrilla Stone Nation Bloods gang and directed a multi-state conspiracy in that role.
Members of two violent street gangs were arrested today in a stunning takedown by the Brooklyn District Attorney.
The gangs are accused of operating out of public housing and often stalk their enemies in broad daylight.
It is a video that explains the urgency of law enforcement officials to arrest nearly 36 violent, gun-happy members of the Wu and Cho Street gangs. A gang member in a black hoodie opens fire in broad daylight and a man putting his child into a car. He thinks the man is a rival, but he misses that man. Instead, hits an innocent 3-year-old leaving daycare.
A popular drill rapper known as Sheff G was one of 32 gang members charged in a string of violence that left one person dead and dozen others injured.
18 guns, including one ghost gun, police say, belong to these 20 young men, ranging in age from 17 to 23. According to the Bronx District Attorney and the NYPD's Chief of Detectives and Commander of the Gun Violence Suppression Division, all were part of the G-Side Drilly gang.
20-year-old Jazier Mitchell and his brother, 19-year-old Jameek Mitchell, are walked out in handcuffs.
They knocked it. We waited about 25 seconds and someone came and opened the door. We announced our presence and we announced why we were there.
The suspect's parents and younger siblings were also home.
What were they doing during all this?
They were asleep.
The arrests here wrap up as the sun is rising and families are starting their day. Investigators say these hyper-focused warrants are precision policing in action.
There are so many good people out of the Wagner houses, and it's the small amount of people doing the crime and the violence out there.
Back at the precinct, police also bring in 20-year-old Melvin Williams, who was arrested at the second search warrant location.
Innocent, like that's all I gotta do, stop innocent.
This case links 21 shootings back to the Chico gang, most of them targeting rival gangs in Harlem. According to the indictment, 12 people were shot as a result, including 4 innocent bystanders.
8 alleged New York City gang members are now facing charges. They're accused of taking part in shootings and what investigators describe as sophisticated financial crimes. Among their victims, Uber and Lyft drivers.
A white sedan rolls up on the gang's headquarters, and the passengers blast the streets with bullets from the windows and the sunroof. One man is seen falling to the ground as everyone scatters. 30 shots are fired, 5 are wounded, and 1 man is killed. An accomplice blocks the street with a stolen SUV to allow the getaway car to escape. Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez.
Just a few days later, Sheff G takes the shooters from this incident.
21-year-old Aaron Heredia was escorted into a Manhattan courtroom to answer multiple charges in what prosecutors say was a wave of gang-related, financial, and violent crimes involving 8 suspects, described as members of the 2030 crew, or 30 block, connected to crimes including this infamous shootout.
Darkness, highly trained and heavily armed detectives file in. They even position themselves on the roof of the building. And in minutes, one by one of the alleged gang members are in custody, including 17-year-old Giovanni Bennett. He's accused of firing a gun right outside of Metrotech in broad daylight. A bullet hit a 19-year-old college student, an innocent bystander. Police also arrested these 2 17-year-olds in connection to a mass shooting. 8 people shot. 1 died outside the Eleanor Roosevelt houses over the summer.
Officials think this could be the largest gang takedown in history in the borough of Queens. The Queens District Attorney, along with the NYPD Chief of Detectives, announcing the 151-count indictment of 33 alleged gang members. Officials say all 33 defendants are charged with conspiracy to commit murder and that 18 of those were active trigger pullers. They say the defendants are members of warring gangs trying to establish territorial dominance in Southeast Queens. The gun violence escalated after the high-profile murder of an aspiring high school basketball star 4 years ago.
The second person for the death of drill rapper Avanti Frowner, 24-year-old Isaiah Garrett, is facing a murder charge. Frowner shot and killed outside a pharmacy in the Tremont section of the Bronx.
Today, 17 alleged members of 3 Brooklyn gangs were indicted. CBS 2's Natalie Duddridge has more from downtown Brooklyn.
Video shows 2 men with dark hoodies walk into an Albany Avenue apartment and up the stairs where police say a Sweet 16 birthday was underway. Another man at the door pulls out a gun and starts shooting.
A takedown of accused gang members in Brooklyn. 21 arrests in what's been called a reign of terror. that left 2 people dead and 4 others hurt. This comes on the heels of a shocking rise in the number of shootings in the city last month.
The gunman in this video, gang name Bones, Zidon Clark, reportedly thought he was firing at a rival gang member. Turns out he allegedly shot an innocent 15-year-old, Rohan Levy, in a case of mistaken identity.
I'm really frustrated with New York right now because for years, New York was, trendsetters. But now it looks like to me New York is doing some following. Now, I know people in New York, if they real, they going to understand what I'm saying. I ain't talking bad about New York. I'm just pointing out something that I see. Now, they're saying that this form of drill music is their own. They created their own lane and they ran with it. But what drill is doing to New York City is out of this world, man. I'm talking about the crime. Like, we haven't seen this type of crime in New York City since the 90s. Straight up. And it's all broadcast on social media. In New York, people should be smarter than that, man, because why would they think that in a place like New York, with all the things that's going on, this is Gotham City. This is supposed to be the Mecca of the East Coast. Why would they think that they're going to be able to get away with these type of crimes and this type of behavior? They never been able to get away with it. We talking about a city that introduced the world to stop and frisk.
Thousands stopped on the streets of New York because they look or act a certain way. Encounters with the blue and white breed fear, frustration, and anger at a force that some say is bent more on intimidation than serving and protecting.
They say the NYPD stops and frisks way too many innocent men of color for no good reason.
He was holding me, he was going through your pocket, he was going up, down.
You want to go to jail?
For what?
Shut your mouth, kid.
What am I getting arrested for?
Shut your mouth.
What am I getting arrested for?
For being a mutt, you know what?
Also, that's a law, being a mutt? He was going through my sweater. Then that's when he told me to keep my hands on my head. So I was like this the whole time.
Frustrated by how often he was being stopped in his Harlem neighborhood, a 16-year-old son of a cop named Alvin says he hit record on his iPod one night in 2011.
Why you push me out for?
As 2 undercover officers approached.
Our job is to look for suspicious behavior. When you keep looking at us like that, looking back.
Because y'all always stop. I just got stopped 2 blocks away.
Listen to me. When you were walking the block with your hood up and you keep looking back at us like that, bro, you think you might have something.
It is one of the few known recordings of something that happens nearly 2,000 times a day in New York, but whether this is the exception or the rule is a debate dividing America's biggest city.
Why you push me out for? Why you push me out for? Why you touching me that?
What happens to officers in a stop like that?
There is a civilian complaint process, and indeed there is a civilian complaint review board.
Ray Kelly is the man in charge of the NYPD.
We have a system to address that. Now, I'm not talking specific about this case because I don't know about it, but we're human beings here. We make mistakes, and we may have people who inappropriately stop individuals, but by and large, I don't believe that's the case. It is event specific.
Since taking over in 2002, Kelly has presided over the most dramatic reduction in crime in modern American history.
Last year was a record low of shootings. They're down 25% this year.
Like his predecessor, Bill Bratton, Kelly believes in proactive policing. And done properly, the 250 is a Supreme Court-approved method of stopping crime before it happens. But here is the controversial part. Of the thousands of daily stop and frisks, only 6% lead to an arrest, and little over 1% actually turn up a weapon. Critics say this is proof it doesn't work. Mayor Michael Bloomberg disagrees.
That's the reason we need it, to deter people from carrying guns. We are the first preventers.
In a fiery speech this week, Bloomberg chastised NYPD critics.
They seem to believe that the department should be run according to the standards of political correctness, not public safety.
Cop says first preventers only works with the strong backing of City Hall, especially in the face of this statistic. Even though blacks and Hispanics are a minority here, a majority of people stopped, around 84%, are young men of color. How many times have you been stopped and frisked?
7 times.
7 times?
Yes, sir.
And you're how old?
17.
In his neighborhood of Flatbush, Brooklyn, Kasim Walters has witnessed gang shootouts and watched young men his age bleed out in the street.
I've seen people shot over there on North Strand Avenue.
But after a number of rough 250s...
Then they turned me back here. I remember them banging my head into this.
He says he's more afraid of the law than the thugs. And a few blocks away, he shows me the memorial of a 250 gone bad that fills him with even more dread.
Oh, look at that. It's still here.
When Kamani Gray adjusted his waistband on this corner in March, 2 undercover officers stepped up for a stop and frisk and ended up shooting him 7 times. They claim Gray pulled this loaded .38 revolver, later recovered at the scene. But Kasim doesn't believe them.
That's not killing, that's murder. I'm tired of it.
4 days of angry demonstrations proves he's not alone.
When things like this happen, there's no trust. The police are never going to get the benefit of the doubt until we have a relationship with the cops. You know, until Ray Kelly can give us answers.
Now, some people will question, what do this have to do with drill music? What does stop and frisk policies or laws have to do with drill music? So if people remember stop and frisk, I know the New Yorkers do. A lot of people had a lot to say about stop and frisk. People hated it. People didn't like the fact that working class citizens of New York City was being stopped and stripped down to the streets for next to nothing. And those tactics lasted for 10 years, ended in 2013. Now, what happened in 2014? Drill music took off. Drill music took off. Bobby Shmurda. Almost immediately when Bobby Shmurda hit the scene, he got arrested. Big indictment. This was probably the first notable indictment in a long time that we've seen in New York City for rappers. But as we see now, there's been a continuance of it. From 2013 or 2014 on to now, we've probably seen 30 indictments. A lot of these guys are rappers. And drill music has been the catalyst to all the crime. That's what people are saying in New York City. And I can agree to a certain level, because we're not just saying this in New York, we're saying it in Orlando, we're saying it in Chicago. Anywhere where drill music is prevalent, we're saying an upstick in crime. Now, in 2017, New York had 195 murders, lowest murders probably in decades. But since then, crime in New York City has skyrocketed through the roof. We talking about 400 murders now, 500 murders now. It's getting crazy. And a lot of these shootings, as y'all just watched in them videos, we talking about innocent babies getting hit. All gun violence, all gang related. And why is this all going on? Because I don't think that people want to go back and stop and frisk, even though history says that a lot of times when you got crime out of control in our community, black people, us, ask for these laws. I just hope they don't do it again, because we seen it with the 95 crime bill when off the heels of the crack epidemic and crime was going haywire, that African Americans and people of color in these urban environments begged for them laws, but them laws had adverse effects on the citizens, just like stop and frisk did. All the trauma it caused the average working class person just to being stopped and stripped and searched. It's not worth it at the end of the day. And y'all seeing the statistics. Even though crime was down. So we got to figure out another way, and the citizens of New York have to figure out another way to curb this violence, because I'm going to tell y'all what's going to happen. The community is going to start begging for help. And the only way America knows how to help black communities, even though there's millions of ways, the only way they know how to help is to arrest. And that's why we're saying all these indictments of these rappers. They blaming it on rap and gang violence, and they coming down on these guys. So we got the police coming down on us, and we're still killing each other, because let's be honest, out of all them videos we just seen, what was it? Blacks killing other blacks. And this is a problem that we need to fix. And I don't believe in black on black violence. You know, I don't believe in that. You know, people kill who they close to, and we live in environments where it's us, so we killing us. But we got to figure out a way to fix this problem. New York has to figure out a way to fix this problem, because I don't think, matter of fact, I can say I know stop and frisk not the answer. That's not the answer. Y'all heard that boy at 13, 14 years old, the encounters he was having with police. And I told y'all in previous videos, the hatred for police start early. Our child gotta be is 10 and tall. police will treat him like a grown man. And it creates an anger, a hatred, a distrust that sometimes never can be repaired. But if they don't fix New York and we're going to keep saying these indictments, what are we going to do? Because just like the shootings and the murders is killing our community, these indictments are too, because a lot of these guys are fathers. And we all know what happened when you take the father away from the child. The cycle continues. But let me know how y'all feel about this in the comments. Just keep it G News. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Support the real. Like I say, it's 27 rappers currently, drill rappers, arrested in New York City. And counting. If our community don't get a hold on this problem. And I'm out.
I'm probably gonna die if I lead a clan. You got your turn and you turned your back. You turned around, ain't no turning back. I can't be the boss and no us and that. I'm bringing Bo and I'm bipping with 2 times. I bought the drink and the kid got a coupon. Make 20,000 a neck on a futon. Sitting out cause my brother in Jumon. Why you telling people you selling fentanyl? Why you telling feds you selling shit at all? Why you telling cops if you about to get it all? I'm already squeezing. You be dreaming about your dreams. I be living out my nightmares. I been missing, I been bad. The other night she was right there. I be lurking with my bros. I be crying with my mom. She be praying to the Lord that I don't turn into a monster. You be dreaming about your dreams. I be living out my nightmares. I been missing Kevin Bay.